Hi, and welcome to episode 4 of Starting Nowhere. I'm your host, Brandon. Today, my guest is Melisa Kennedy. Melisa is a commercial real estate professional who also does Toastmasters and dabbles as a Medicaid consultant. I hope you enjoy our conversation. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Hi, my name is Melisa Kennedy, and I work in commercial real estate. I've been doing that for quite a while now. And I'm also a Toastmaster, a Mary Kay consultant, and I also like to speak occasionally. So full plate, but always busy being out with people and trying to help.
Well, that's awesome. Actually, Toastmasters is how we met. I mean, I know you know that. So, why don't you tell people a little bit more about your involvement in Toastmasters and how you came to the unfortunate decision that led you to CAE that day and meeting me?
That was not an unfortunate decision. It was actually a very good decision. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to meet you and remain friends. Toastmasters is an organization that helps to promote public speaking and leadership. And it's a self-paced program that exists around the globe. People come in many times lacking confidence, and through practice and encouragement from others, mentoring, they learn to be better speakers and better leaders, more confident, and so they can give back to their communities or through their work or other organizations. So I had an opportunity to travel around the Tampa Bay area to visit several clubs and introduce a new format for Toastmasters that would help us move into a more technological age. And that's when I had an opportunity to meet you, Brandon, for the first time. Since then, we've had many conversations on many different topics. So here we go again.
If I'm doing my math correctly, which is I seldom am, probably about 2.5 years ago now, I think is when you came to our meeting. Because that's no, it'd have to be longer than that, I think, maybe, because I haven't worked at that company since December of 2018. So it's coming up on almost probably 3 years or something closer to. But yeah,
Wow, time flies when you're having fun. Can't
yeah,
believe that.
exactly. It's been a long time. But I think one of the things for me that drew me to Toastmasters, other than the fact that I get a captive audience that can't run away from me, was the networking opportunities too. For when I first joined that company, I didn't know anybody there, of course, and so Toastmasters is a great way to meet people. And I think that's one of the things, once you get it outside of the company perspective and just a worldwide Toastmasters, is the networking opportunities. There's a lot of CEOs, there's a lot of people in different careers, and you really get to sit down and talk with them. So tell me, in your opinion, obviously, the most interesting person you've met through Toastmasters.
Oh, the most interesting person. That's a really difficult question to answer because, like you said, you meet so many people. You meet people who are professional speakers or people who are aspiring speakers. You meet people from banking, from law, from people who are serving our veterans communities. Uh, it's just very interesting the cultures that you are exposed to through Toastmasters because the one thing that unites Toastmasters is the interest in connecting with other people. It's a very basic human element, and that means you bring and attract all kinds of people with all kinds of experience. And while I don't know the most interesting person I have met, I will tell you the most interesting experience I've had in Toastmasters, and that's been in the last few months. Toastmasters Leadership Institute, or TLI, is going on to train officers and others throughout the area. And as part of that training, there was a diversity and inclusion panel led by Verlyn Ford, who's very passionate about what's happening in our society right now. And really, it's not just a recent event. We just hear a lot more about it on the news recently. But I got to sit on a panel of people that were probably from 4 or 5 different races, that some were English first language, some were not, some were born in this country, some were not. And I'm not sure how many different religious aspects we covered or anything else, but it was quite an interesting dynamic. And the thing about that group was that we opened up and had a very robust discussion. As we prepared for this panel, we got to know each other on different levels. We didn't always agree on the way somebody described a situation and how it was perceived. Because each of our experiences is different. And so as we hear a story, we hear it through our own lens. And so we would ask questions and challenge the person's position. And it was done in such a respectful way that it was a huge learning opportunity. So I I found that to be probably the richest experience I've had in Toastmasters in the 11 years I've been part of that organization. Who's the most interesting person? I'm not sure there's one. Just the group as a whole is fascinating to me.
I would agree with that, and I can attest to how difficult it would be to answer that question for myself because while you said Toastmasters is a great chance for people to get a little bit more confidence, a lot of confident people join Toastmasters and therefore have very big personalities and their characters for sure. And so when you go to some of the local competitions or events, you definitely meet some people that are not shy. So
Yes, that's true.
but that's a really interesting experience. I hadn't even really considered how Toastmasters was handling, the recent social unrest and everything that's going on in the world. Do you think they are making that kind of center to their message, or do you think they're more so just speaking to that as one of the many things that they do because their populace is also going through that?
You know, Toastmasters is about developing leaders and giving people a platform to speak and a chance to develop their speaking skills, to express what's going on to them, whether it's to the people in the Toastmasters room or external to that. So I think there are many different ways that Toastmasters is helping. First, they're recognizing that all of their members are going through this. It's not isolated to location or race. We are all going through a hard time right now, whether it's related to the social aspects with racial tensions, whether it's COVID, whether it's being just locked down at home, people have lost jobs. So recognizing where people are is very important. And it's a layering effect. And to address something that is so, as I grew up, to talk about race was a very taboo type thing. And so to bring it into a conversation and just recognize where people are, give them a chance to speak, to explore their own thoughts on race, and to get to know somebody that they might not have ordinarily gotten to know on a very personal level. We're Toastmasters is changing hearts and minds and just allowing the walls to come down and the reach to broaden. And I think it's serving the members of the community in that way. I can't tell you what their full purpose is in opening up that conversation right now, but certainly it's all about supporting the members and developing leadership and speaking opportunities.
Well, I think one of the things that's good about an organization like Toastmasters, or really anywhere that it happens, is opening up those conversations. Because as you said, many of us grew up not talking about the big three, race, religion, and politics. And now we find ourselves in a situation where that's all that's in front of our face. It seems like 24/7, particularly if you're participating in social media. People get on there to kind of throw out their thoughts on everything that's going on. And then you go to news channels and it's the same thing over and over again. And now that we're not having the external stimuli we used to, or at least external to being outside of our apartments and houses, we're not getting as distracted from it. And so it's harder to hide from those realities. And I think also in the midst of it, like you said, there's COVID, there's joblessness, there's also the racial tensions, and everything just kind of compounded and started snowballing upon one another to get to where we are now. So for Toastmasters not to address it, I think would be disingenuous, and it would kind of turn off a lot of their members because it would be really difficult to go in and give a speech about, I don't know, snails or something in the midst of everything else that's going on. So but something again that I hadn't thought about, because I just haven't been a part of Toastmasters in so long, which is my fault, and I need to get back at it. But how have they transitioned to the digital space? I know that was part of their mission when you first came and were briefing on the new system they were putting into place was going more digital. But how has it been now that people can't really go to Toastmaster meetings in person? How have they transitioned to the digital space, and have you seen some struggles there?
Many clubs have started using Zoom, just like we're using tonight. And they invite their regular club members, and if there is a guest that's interested, the guest receives the meeting invitation as well and the link to the meeting. So we have Toastmasters who are tuning in to meetings around the world. It's pretty cool. And Beverly Plant, for instance, gave a speech to a club. I think she said it was in Japan. She was really nervous to do it, but she said it was a great experience, very empowering, very uplifting, and she said she would definitely do it again. So people are getting to go way beyond the four walls of their club and not having to wait to go to meetings that are geographically distant from where they live.
Now, I know you know this, but I'll say it for anyone who listens benefit. But I transitioned to working from home last year. And so it's been very interesting to me to see the rest of the world kind of catch up to that and seeing the real benefits and challenges of a more remote working status. And I'm very interested to see how that continues to develop, because I think a lot of companies are realizing they can save a lot of money by doing that. They improve their employees' morale by doing that, and there's a better work-life balance by doing that as well. So I'm very interested to see how that permanently changes the workforce. I know that my company has talked a little bit about some jobs are just never coming back in the office. They just don't need them to, and it cuts down on their costs significantly. And I just think that's very interesting to see how something like COVID has changed that world, and especially with Toastmasters. I think now, even in a world where I could go to a Toastmaster meetings, and I think there's value in that. I don't want to say that there's no value in going in person, but I do think you can get a more diversified set of listening and speaking when you do that. So like, for example, I'm not going to travel to Japan. And if I do, I'm probably not going to have time to swing by a Toastmasters meeting. So doing something like that would be really cool. So I think that's really innovative and a good way to make good of a bad situation, if you will. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about where you think Toastmasters is going in the near future. Not so much from a perspective of reacting to COVID, but what they were doing before and how this can help or hurt them. Because one of the things I've been interested to see is if the numbers have gone up now that people, like you said, they're at home. And well, the excuse was, I don't want to drive all the way across town to go to a Toastmasters meeting. I don't know anybody. But now you're not talking to anybody anyways, you might as well go ahead and have a social gathering from your living room if you can.
So here's where I think I've become a bad guest. I have to tell you, I have been working from home primarily since January. In January and February, I was in the office less than once a week. And of course, since COVID, every day is at home. I spend lots of hours in front of my computer, lots of hours in the same room, and I don't really want to spend more hours here when it's time for a Toastmasters meeting. So it's a little bit of a struggle for me. Quite honestly, I do miss people, and Toastmasters or other online meetings are a way to connect. So I do occasionally join in, but it's not something that I have gotten back into the habit of doing. I haven't gotten comfortable with the technology. As long as I've been in Toastmasters, I still cringe at the idea of my face on a screen and my voice on recording. So yeah, it takes a little while, I think, to get used to that. I guess if you're of a certain age or a certain technology level, if you've been using this kind of stuff for a while, maybe it doesn't deter you. But for me, it takes a little while to get comfortable with that. And I will also say that, there is something that you definitely miss whenever you are in person or when you're on technology versus being in person. And it's showing up at work too. I have a new project manager who's working for me. And what I've noticed recently is as he's learning, he's missing the benefit of hearing conversations around him, of seeing other ways that people work. He doesn't always assert himself. And I think to be around people and to hear others presenting themselves in a certain way, you pick up those cues and you learn from others just by being in their space. So I'm glad we have the technology. I'm glad we're able to connect. I love the convenience of it, but sometimes I still want to be in person for some other benefits.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think having people see that now has helped me a lot because I don't think anybody directly said this, and my performance certainly didn't support this conclusion. But sometimes when you work from home, they assume that you don't work, that you just hang out and that you do nothing and everything. And so now having everyone else go through this, they see the challenges of it and they see that it's kind of difficult sometimes, especially from a perspective of separation. When you normally drive into an office, you're at the office. You can't pretend that you're at your house. But right now, I'm literally sitting in the room that come 6 o'clock or whatever time I'm going to log out for the day, I can take the same uh, desk and now I turn 2 inches to the right and I get on my gaming PC and I'm going to play a video game. And, so it's hard to have that mental separation between productivity and what we would do for leisure. So I think that's one of the challenges, but more importantly, the connection, like you said, a lot of people are very social, and then the social cues and learning is a lot different. You have to really be a self-starter, kind of self-motivated person to be able to
Yes.
work from home on a regular basis. Because if you're not calling into those meetings, if you're not doing your stuff, it'll take a while for people to figure it out, but also you're not going to get better. And I think most jobs, especially when they're looking for people to lay off, want you to be better than you were the day before. They want you to know more. They want you to be more efficient. And you can't let working at home slow you down from that.
And the big question is, how do they know you're better? If they're not
Exactly.
seeing you in the office, they're not hearing you, how do they know? So it puts the onus on an employee to make themselves more visible.
See, I like to take all of my achievements, put them on coffee mugs, and send them to them as gifts. I feel like that's a really good, subtle way to remind them of what I'm doing day to day, because you have to find those ways. It can't just be anymore where I walk past them in the hall and mention it. I have to make sure that it sits there every time I take a sip of coffee. Like, oh, yeah, Brandon closed out this many projects this year. I'm like, yeah, you got to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean,
Sure.
I'm joking, obviously, but I think you bring up a very good point. How do you keep the metrics tight? How do you make sure that you're actually tracking what people are doing instead of just what you can see? Especially in career fields like mine, where it's a lot of gray. What I'm doing day to day, there's not a lot of metrics for it. And it's funny because a lot of companies, they want to track metrics, and you're like, all right, I don't have a lot of metrics, but I assure you, if I stopped showing up to work, you would notice pretty quickly, So I'm very interested to see how they make that transition as well, from tracking the metrics they can see. One of the ones people used to do is, what time are you clocking out in the evening? They'll look for your car in the parking lot or something like that, from very micromanaging type companies. But now they can't do that. So they're like, oh, well, am I going to check and see if he's online? Am I going to send them a Skype or an email or something like that and see if he responds back? Or am I just going to have to assume that the job's getting done because I'm hearing that the job's getting done,
Yeah. I think it requires a lot of listening,
Mhm.
actually. And Toastmasters is certainly a great place to learn to listen. As much as we like to talk, you have to listen as well. And that I find to be the best skill that I have and the one that I could use the most improvement on in my day job. As I'm sitting in meetings and I'm listening to different people speak, you can pick up on cues. You can very clearly recognize that somebody is not themselves today just by subtle cues in their voice or certain words that they say. And when I hear that, I try to pick up the phone and call them off outside of the meeting and just check and see how they're doing. I mean, maybe they're just tired of being at home. Maybe they're distracted for the day because they have a sick kid at home and there's nowhere to take the kid right now. Their daycares are not open. Maybe they can't go to school. So, everybody's struggling, and I try not to hold it against them or judge just by somebody having a bad moment in a meeting, but I really try to pay attention and then follow up on anything that doesn't make sense and just have an open conversation about it, not an accusational conversation. I don't call up and say, hey, you weren't yourself in that meeting. What's going on? It's a very, hey, what's going on? How are you? Tell me what's happening in your life. What are your plans for tomorrow or for the weekend? And eventually, yeah, they open up and they tell you what's going on.
I'll tell you what, this has been the greatest time of my life to point to and tell people why I don't have kids. It's been the easiest because every time I get on a call and I hear somebody's like, "Daddy's on the phone, Daddy's on the phone," you know, I'm like, "Yeah, that's why. That's it. That right there is exactly why." So all the people who tell me I'm missing out by not having children and everything like that, I'm sure that you're not completely wrong. But right now, after 6 or 7 months inside, I can't feel more right. There's just no
I
way.
agree with you. I don't have any either, and this is not making me want any.
Yeah, yeah. It's been the greatest thing for me. Like I said, just when a dog interrupts a meeting, it's fine. But when the kids do it, you're like, oh man, I know you're having a good time. Particularly for those who live in smaller places. If you have a bigger place and you can send them to a far off corner, then it's not so bad. But I wanted to ask you about your company and see how they've been handling this, because I think my company's starting to come around to this, and I'm very against it. But are you using webcams and Zoom and that type of stuff, or are you just doing telecons?
We are using Microsoft Teams
Mhm.
primarily. Very few people are using webcams. We all have our picture up, the corporate picture, and I hide behind my picture. I mean, and the thing is, I get up almost every day and put on makeup before I start my day, just because it makes me feel better whenever I look in the mirror, more alive and ready to do my day job. And so it's not like I'm sitting here in my pajamas or anything, or haven't brushed my hair or my teeth, but I just feel more comfortable being off camera. It's my way of doing things. I'm an introvert by nature. And so I don't want to be on stage every day. I don't want to have people looking at me. There's something different about having your face on a camera versus being in a meeting. I guess because in a meeting you can read the cues, you kind of have space between yourself and other people. And when you're on camera, like you're up close and personal. There's not a lot of space. It's right here. And I feel a little bit nervous about that kind of thing. So as of right now, it's to each person's choice. There have been very few meetings where we've been asked to turn on our cameras, but there have been a couple. And the dynamic changes, definitely. People get more nervous.
I like as I said before the pandemic, I was working from home, so I've never had a camera. Um, and now that everyone's working from home, for some reason they decided that we need cameras. I'm like, no, nothing has changed about my job in the past 6 months just because of the rest of you are at home now. I still don't need to see you. Let's not do that. That's one of the benefits of not having to go to work, is I don't have to see you. I don't have to. Do any of the normal things I would do. I get to be as comfortable as I can be, and for me at least, I'm more productive that way as well. One pro tip for you: instead of putting makeup on every morning, if you just put it on your mirror, you never have to worry about it again. It's always in place. You're good to go. But uh, I think that's just a funny thing, because my girlfriend's doing that as well, because a lot of her school moved online, and I got the majority of my degrees online. And again, no cameras. I never got on camera, and it's really weird how when systems aren't used to being remote, they think you need cameras, but the ones that are set up to be remote, they're like, we don't care if we see you ever. I guarantee you that none of my professors know what I look like from most of my courses, because we never got on camera with one another. But now that other schools and jobs are trying to fill in that gap, they're like, oh, we need cameras. People need to feel connected and everything. And I'm like, I don't. Again, just personal taste. I don't recommend it. I don't need it.
I'm with you.
So, how has your 2020 been outside of work? We've talked about work. We've talked about Toastmasters. Just how has Melissa's 2020 been, just outside of the lines?
So actually, I will say I feel like I'm the poster child for COVID 2020 because so many people are reacting in different ways and struggling. And I kind of went into this place where I said, I'm going to come out a better person. I'm going to use the time to my benefit. And if I can't go anywhere, I have projects that I've been putting off around the house that it's time to actually address them. I've been cleaning out and decluttering, going through boxes that I haven't opened in months or years, and finally making decisions about what to do with those things. I have been reading, I have been writing, I have been meditating, all kinds of things to take care of myself. And so we're 6 months into this or so right now, and I feel rejuvenated in a way I haven't in a long time. When you are a kid and you're in school and even through college, you get your summers off. And even when you have your summer job, it's still not like a real job, it's temporary. So once you start work and 20 years later, you're like, man, I just wish I could have a couple of weeks off. And I've actually had an opportunity to take 2 weeks off for the first time in my entire career and just relax, not have anywhere to go, no cars to pack for vacation, no heavy laundry to do when you get back from vacation, just It's been relaxing, and I'm ready to do different things now. I've started making a list of all the things I want to do next and beginning to prioritize and start putting together a plan so that I can achieve the next round of goals. But how's Melissa outside of COVID? That's kind of it. I mean, COVID induced it, but I'm in a place in doing things in life that I wouldn't be doing had COVID not happened. But it's been the best time I've had in a lot of years.
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that. And I always try to balance this next statement with reality, or at least not reality. Let's say me being cognizant of not everyone being in the same situation. But I think that sometimes when situations can be their darkest, like a worldwide pandemic, like the racial tensions, like everything is going on, there can be some really good positive changes and some really good things that come out of it. And I think for some of us, that is definitely what we've seen this year. And I'm hoping that that will continue for the majority of people as they learn to, not learn to, apologize, as they continue to move on from what's happening and continue to try to find a new way to exist. I've seen it with a lot of different situations. You know, you can see it with people who had a loss of a job and then they find their new career, they find a new passion. You can see it with somebody who even lost a partner and then they find their soulmate. You know, it doesn't always work out that way. I know life is chaos. It's not always going to work out that way. But I think sometimes with these type of things, you can find a lot of positive. And I think a lot of people have self-reflected and started to try to heal themselves for the first time in a long time. Because I think much like myself, you're a person who's go, go, go. And so you never stopped really to sit still for a second and work on some of the things you maybe had just kept putting off. You're like, oh, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that later. And like you said, that's how those boxes don't get open for years. It's not because you just don't open them. It's because each day you don't open them, you know? And so I'm very glad to hear that you were able to come through a lot of these challenges and really find a way to make it positive for yourself. Now, do you think you'll be able to maintain that once you're able to really start truly going out and traveling and doing all the stuff you used to do again?
I don't know. Who knows what life looks like in 6 months? Are we back to our normal activities? I think the longer we stay in this period, the more we adjust and the more permanent changes we make to our lifestyle. So I think at 6 months, we're beginning to change as a society all around the world to appreciate self-care, to appreciate the stillness and just to be rather than all of the go, 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 as you said. I think we'll still travel a lot. People still want to see the world and experience different cultures and foods and things around the world, but it will be more intentional. It'll be less about the moments to capture in the selfie than the moments of being together with other people and the richness of the culture and being with nature. And I don't know if I'll be able to maintain it. I hope to maintain it, and I'm committing to myself to preserve that even as I go forward, even as life gets busier, work gets busier. I I am intentional about how I will maintain some of this balance for myself. You mentioned healing, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but late last year, my mom passed away suddenly. And she was my last parent. I say last because I've had multiple parents, not just my birth parents in my life. And she was the last one. And I'm an only child and I don't have children. So I was feeling very disoriented, going through a lot of grief, along with a high stress job, moving, a new job. There was a lot of change happening all at once. And so, with the grief cycle, with stress, and then with COVID, it was kind of the perfect storm. And like I said, you won't find another person more grateful than me to have had this opportunity to heal. It came at the perfect time for me. And that is sustainable going into 2021 and beyond.
Well, first of all, my condolences. I was aware. I think we did share some Facebook messages or maybe text when that happened. I believe I was aware of that. Um, but I'm glad again that you were able to take what seems like a series of bad events happening back to back and continue to turn it into something. So I have faith that you'll take at least one piece of the healing processes that you've developed over this time with you in the future. And so that kind of leads me into the question that I have is, what is your favorite or the hobby that you think has done the most for you since this whole COVID shutdown has happened? I call them COVID hobbies, and I'm sure other people do as well. But what is your favorite or most impactful COVID hobby you've picked up, you think?
I've got two: journaling and meditation.
Okay.
Meditation, I had heard a lot about it, said, okay, I'll try it, didn't really know what to do, kind of wasted some time, and then like I figured it out. And having an opportunity to just sit and calm your thoughts, and just that has been so relieving for me, very therapeutic. Just when the anxiety starts to come, your heart starts to beat fast, your breath start to get short. That's to me is the indicator of, okay, I need to just take 5 minutes, shut down all of this stuff, and take a minute to recenter myself. That has been very grounding, very puts me in control of a lot of things. We can get busy and just get into the rhythm of doing our work. And as things irritate us, it gets us more and more and more off center, and we don't even realize it. So if you have the awareness that you're exhibiting signs of stress or anxiety and you can shut it down, gain that centered feeling, gain your breath, it gives you control over the rest of your day. It gives you control over how you respond, and ultimately over how people see you and the effectiveness of how you are performing in your job. So meditation is one. The other is journaling. I have a lot of thoughts racing in my head all the time, from personal to future to work, just anything, what's happening in America. All these things are always racing inside of my head, and I don't always know how to get them out. There's something about writing literally with a pen or pencil on paper that allows the thoughts to flow out of me in a way that I can't get them out any other way. And when I get them on paper, it relieves my mind. I'm not continuing to churn over and over and over about the same thoughts. I'm able to release them and move on to something more productive. So if I don't do anything else coming out of the habits that I've formed through COVID, I will continue the meditation. It may not be daily, but definitely a couple of times a week, and writing the same way, just at least a couple of times a week when I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious or sad. Sometimes the sadness still hits me and I'm able to write it, and I get it out and I can move on. 5 minutes later, I'm in a better space.
I think meditation is one of those things, again, at least from my experience with it, that just had a terrible marketing team. They, when I was growing up, when you heard about meditation, you heard about it in a very much hippie-ish way, very spiritual way, and that's what people represented it as. So if for certain people in religious communities, they were like, well, we're not going to do that because we're religious, we're this religion, so we're not going to do that. But then recently, I think it was a little bit before COVID, I first started trying it. And then in COVID, I really got into it. For people like me, it's just stopping for a second, stopping and literally just letting your brain not think, trying to just
Yes.
focus on not doing anything for a few minutes, which for me, used to, not so much anymore, but I'd wake up, I grab my phone, immediately I'm reading news, I'm doing whatever, I'm texting, doing whatever I'm going to do. Then I walk my dog and I'm, just come back in and I'm on the computer for work or for pleasure, for whatever else. And then I do that all the way up until I go to sleep again. And so there's no moment where I'm just stopping for a second. And so meditation really made me actively do nothing, which I think is the greatest thing. And for me, I always describe the feeling I got at the end as feeling empty, which was great because there was no thoughts running a million miles. There was no, I got to do this next. There was no anything. It's just for a second, just for even those few seconds that it happened after, you just felt ready to be filled up with something like more positive and ready to go do something else. And so I can relate to that. I think that's a lot of people's COVID hobby, and that makes me very happy to hear because I don't see anybody who meditates and becomes a worse person. That would be a really, really weird side effect to have happen. Now, the journaling, I have to admit, I cannot get behind myself because I hate writing. Like manually, I hate writing. I'll type all day, but I I almost failed. I don't remember what grade it was, and I just had talked about this in the conversation recently, but I almost failed in early grade because I couldn't do cursive writing. I am terrible at fine motor skills, and I avoid writing as much as I can. Sometimes I'm trying to rush through it so much, I'll combine letters. I'll take like the back of a D and make it into an R or something. It's a mess. It's terrible.
As long as you have your outlets, that's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah. I do this like anybody else who's balanced. I beat my wife and I yell at people. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I believe that.
Keep in mind, for the purposes that this is a joke and I have no wife, so it doesn't make sense on several levels. All right, so I just want to be clear about that. But um, no, I think it's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you picked up meditation. Did you do it through an app, or did you just kind of follow on YouTube, or how'd you get into it?
Well, I first read about it and then I was trying to do it on my own and I was having moderate success. Then somebody told me about the Calm app
Mhm.
and recommended it. I did the I think it was a 7 or either 14-day trial. I did that and then decided it was worth investing in. And then I bought the subscription for a year.
Mhm.
So I've been doing it probably 2 months now on a regular basis,
That's
maybe a
awesome.
little longer.
So a little bit of advice for anybody who happens to hear this, but if you have an Amex card, Amex actually gave away during all this. I think it's still going on. A free year of Calm. They actually all their card holders get a free year of Calm. That was their way of trying to help people, deal with all the stress and everything that's going on. So I can say myself, I like Headspace. Headspace, I think, was a little bit more formatted for me, and it had a more good regiment for how you do it. But I think now I've kind of gotten away from wanting to do that. I think I might end up switching to Team Calm here sometime in the future. But I just re-upped for another year on Headspace, so it probably won't be anytime soon. But I'm glad to hear that you had the meditation. I'm glad to hear about the journaling and just everything else that's going on. So let me ask you your personal opinion based upon whatever data you have or no data, just your gut feeling or whatever. What does the other side of this look like for us as a country? And when I say the other side of this, I mean everything that's going on. What do we think to say? Let's say we can get over it in the next 3 months in 2021. What does that look like? Also, that's not how math works. I don't think. I think it's longer than 3 months till 2021. But let's just say whatever the timing is, that once we get to 2021, everything has been solved. What do you think that actually looks like?
Okay, so I'm a degreed engineer, so I could come up with 1,000 different possible solutions and analyze all of them and still go, I don't know. And I think that's a really powerful thing is to say, I don't know. And I hear people saying that more and more often. There was a time we felt like we had to have an answer and it had to be a valid answer. We had to justify it. And right now, I think it's okay not to know. It's okay to just be in the space that you're in and let tomorrow happen as it happens. I think that as we allow life to unfold, we have an opportunity, we have many choices we can make in how we want the outcome to unfold. Uh, in doing that, we have choices on what do we do today? How do we act toward others? Do we get out and vote? Do we go out and register people to vote? Do we go out and have these uncomfortable conversations? Do we present ourselves in a professional, calm way and try to share that same type of energy with other people? Do we open our arms and welcome people in? Do we shut people out? And there's no right answer. Everybody's got their own answers to these questions and more questions than answers. But, for me, I don't know where we go or from here. I know, I have this picture of utopia. So, I would strive for why can't we all just get along and love each other? That is not reality, and I'm well aware of that. But every day I have a choice in how I present myself to others and whether I welcome them in and make them feel comfortable in their own skin and and appreciated and accepted. And I try to do that. I just, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your mission in life is. I mean, even if I disagree with you, I can respect you and I can learn from you. And I try to do those things. And hopefully we end up in a place where we are all better people, more understanding, more caring, and more open.
I certainly hope that all that can happen. And since I put you on the clock for 2021, you've got 3 months to make that all come together. So you're going to be busy. Um, but no, I would agree with you. I think the only answer anybody can give to almost any question that involves the future is I don't know. You know, you can have your guesses, you can have your hopes, you can have your dreams, but none of us know. And I think only thing I'll say about it is I think there is a future. I don't think no matter what you're reading, what you're watching, I don't think that there's any great change coming that's going to destroy what we've built. I do think there is a future. I do think that we're going to get through all of this. And I think there is an other side of this. And I think it's, again, it's unknown. So it'll have its pros, it'll have its cons. But I think I'm hopeful that what we've learned through this will remain with us and we can actually pass that down to the future generations as well. So they don't have to necessarily go through the same pain. They'll have their own. So, um, but again, I think that no matter what we do in the future, I just hope it's not what we did in the past. I don't think there's anything good about just repeating everything we've done. However, some people like that for whatever reason, but I don't know. We'll certainly see. Um, so I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you when we got together is how has since the last time we spoke, which has again been a little bit of time, and I'll take the blame for that. I am very bad at staying in touch. It's one of my worst flaws. Uh, how has your life changed? I think you said you moved. I believe you. I don't want to put too much of your business out there, but I believe you closed on that property that you were looking at overseas and everything. Just what has it been like for you? Other than obviously we've talked about a lot of the bad things that have happened, both worldwide and personal to you. Just what has changed for you, and where do you think you're at today compared to where you were then?
At risk of sharing everything here, I've already
That's
disclosed a good bit of change that has happened with moving, with real estate properties, personal stuff that we have, investments that we've made, rental properties and such. And with the death of my mom, new job, there's enough out there. And
Mhm.
and to say that that's not everything, you know, life has surprises for you. Sometimes they come in a form that you're not expecting. You never know. Everything can be a gift. It's how you look at it, how you choose to value it. And maybe what's not new for me, but I have a new appreciation for is where I've been. Something about what you were just saying triggered a memory. I recently had an opportunity to go back home where I'm from and take a friend through there who had never been there. And it's a remote part of South Carolina. And and you would never have a reason to be there if somebody didn't just take you and give you the grand tour. But don't blink because you'll be through it before you open your eyes again. As I was taking my friend on this journey and just I began to appreciate the path that I took to get here. It wasn't easy. I didn't grow up with money. I didn't grow up with opportunity. My parents didn't go to college. They had factory jobs or trade jobs. I didn't go to the best schools. We didn't have AP courses and, have college credits by the time we graduated. Actually, I take that back. We had two, I think, AP courses at my senior year. That wasn't always in our future, but that did materialize before I graduated. So, you know, going back through this journey on what life gave me, I have realized that without any one of those things, no matter how difficult, no matter how good, no matter what, I would not be where I am today without that. So as I've approached COVID, as we approach all of these social issues and all the things that we have an opportunity to change and make and shape the way we want them, I am encouraged to step into it rather than step away because all these things will shape me to continue growing, continue becoming a better and better person along the way. And I'll value every step of the way, even if it's a struggle.
That's awesome. I definitely can relate to having people see where you're from and it be kind of an eye-opening experience, especially as you see it through their eyes. To that end, I'm from Dayton, Ohio, or at least I consider myself from Dayton, Ohio. That's where I did most of my growing up. I had a couple of my military buddies who we went through there for a training course, and I was walking them to one of my favorite food spots that I used to eat at when I was growing up, and they were like, "Are we gonna get shot?" And I was like, "I don't think so. I mean, you might, but I'm from here. I should be fine." But um, and then, but to the complete polar opposite of that, another one of my friends from the military went through there for a training course as well, and they came back and was like, "I don't know why you're always complaining. That area was really nice." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it's not nice at all. But again, I think that all you're saying there is perspective. I think the perspective of realizing where you came from and where you were, not even geographically, but just where you came from as far as the status of what you were doing and everything else that you were building. I think it's really important to always remember that and keep it in context for that you're not done. Because I think sometimes we can get very sidetracked and feel like we're either done or we're not far enough or that the process is taking too long or whatever it is that goes through our mind to make us feel like crap. I think it's really just easier or better, I should say, not easier because it's definitely difficult. It's better to kind of focus on you're still growing into it. You're still building into whatever you're trying to do and look at where you were compared to where you are now. And that can go two ways. Maybe you were somewhere better before where now you can know you can get back there, or maybe you were somewhere worse. And well, now you know that you're not there anymore. So you shouldn't necessarily have the perspective that everything's falling in on you when you know you're still building to something better. So thank you very much. I like your perspective. I like the positivity. It mirrors a lot of what I think, but it's always good to get it from an outside source because sometimes you can't create it for yourself. You know what I mean? So it's always good to refer to other people and trade that energy, especially in a digital medium, which is a lot harder to do. So before I let you go, I've been asking everybody what they think the tagline for their episode would be. And this can be your tagline for the year. It can be your tagline for what you think this conversation was about. Just give me a little tagline that you think would fit for this.
That's a hard one. You really put me on the spot there.
I like to not have people prepared for that question because it seems like a lot of people do struggle to do that.
I don't know. I will default back to a phrase that I've been saying for a couple of years now. And there's a lot of truth to this, and one day it will be a book. But it's the poor little girl from hellhole.
Poor little
Actually,
girl
it's the poor
from
little
hellhole, you
redneck
said?
girl from hellhole, because that's who I am. The place I'm from is called hellhole. We're pretty redneck.
If
We're
if
poor.
if I put that on the title for this episode or whatever we want to call it, I think people are going to be pretty surprised to see your positive outlook. If it says "poor little girl from hellhole," they're going to expect to come in and hear about all these terrible stories of how you were burned with hot irons and things like that when you were growing up and everything. Instead, they get all this positivity about how we can grow into things and don't let the bad world beat you down and everything. It's going to be very shocking, I think.
Yeah, I think about how I grew up, and I have those stories, not being burned by irons, but cigarettes and other things. But, you think about where you've been, and yes, we were poor, we were redneck, we were from the middle of nowhere, and you have choices. You can stay there, and if that is the lifestyle that you choose, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for me, it was not the right answer. And so, I've transformed from that to working in construction to now in the corporate office and being a Mary Kay consultant. So, it doesn't matter what uniform I'm wearing, what's on the outside. The fact is there's still a big heart on the inside here. And it doesn't matter if I'm still that poor little redneck girl from hellhole or whether I'm living in, some uptown swanky penthouse apartment. I'm still the same girl. And that's the important message there, I guess.
Well, keep the redneck with you always, as I always say. A lot of my family members are redneck, and I think having that grounding, as you said, will make that penthouse apartment that much better because you know
Yeah.
what you have. Because people who don't, they go to that penthouse apartment and all they see is the crown molding isn't what they thought it was going to be, or the marble countertop isn't from Calcutta, it's from somewhere else. You have to keep that balance. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
When you've
I
had
also
nothing,
don't
you
know if,
appreciate everything.
yeah. I also want to be clear. I don't think Calcutta does marble. So that just shows you that I'm redneck as well. That I did not come from any of it.
I don't
I
know.
so we'll find out. Somebody will certainly let me know, I'm sure. So again, Melissa, it was great catching up. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I definitely need to make sure that this isn't the last time we speak this year. Because like I
Yes,
said, you've got a lot of work to do before 2021 to make your utopia come to fruition. So I'll need
I
to check
do.
up on you and see how you're doing on that.
Yes, and I need your help too. So
Ugh,
let's
I don't
continue
know
the
about help.
conversation.
I'm pretty lazy. I'm pretty lazy, so I don't know how much help I'll be, but I'll do what I can. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, and have a good
Thank
night.
you.
All right. Talk to you later. Thanks for checking out today's episode of Starting Nowhere. If you want to find more Starting Nowhere, make sure that you like and subscribe. See you next time.